Hi there, my name is Lisa Phillips, and I'm the host of a award-nominated podcast called From Now On, a platform supporting survivors. I want to thank all of my survivor sisters who came before me today. I'll be very short. In the year 2000, I was taken to Jeffrey Epstein's island while on a photo shoot on a nearby island. Who I saw and what I experienced there was a glimpse into a very dark and disturbing world. For years after, I tried to avoid Jeffrey, but he had introduced me to Katie Ford, the owner of the Ford modeling agency. Epstein's reach went to the very top of fashion, arts, and entertainment. This did not just happen to underage girls in Florida. In New York City, hundreds of young, ambitious women were abused by him. Epstein was not just a serial predator, he was an international human trafficker. And many around him knew, many participated, and many profited. And yet, he was protected. So I stand here today for every woman who has been silenced, exploited, and dismissed. We are not asking for pity. We are here demanding accountability, and I'm demanding justice. Congress must choose. Will you continue to protect predators, or will you finally protect survivors? And also, I would like to announce here today, us Epstein survivors have been discussing creating our own list. We know the names. Many of us were abused by them. Now, together as survivors, we will confidentially compile the names we all know, who were regularly in the Epstein world. And it will be done by survivors and for survivors. No one else is involved. Stay tuned for more details.
Hello, my name is Shantae Davies, and I'm here before you today as a survivor of decades of pain, trauma, and betrayal at the hands of Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein, and the people who enabled them, and a government that for far too long refused to help. In 2002, I was living in California, a young woman with high aspirations of becoming an actress. I was already beginning to make a name for myself in the industry. A person I trusted, someone I thought was a friend, invited me to meet a powerful woman who could help advance my career. That woman happened to be Ghislaine Maxwell. I was asked to give her a massage, though I had almost no experience, and when I did, she praised me and promised introductions to someone enormously powerful, someone who could change the course of my life, and that man was Jeffrey Epstein. At first, I was an excited young woman on top of the world. Epstein flew me to his private island. He listened to my dreams, promised to help, but his promises came with a catch. The abuse began. He told me to keep it secret. He manipulated me with quid pro quo I did not consent to, but I felt I had no one to turn to. He was too powerful. I was just one of the many young women trapped in his orbit. I was even taken on a trip to Africa with former President Bill Clinton and other notable figures. In those moments, I realized how powerless I was. If I spoke out, who would believe me? Who would protect me? Epstein himself was the most powerful leader of our country. Epstein surrounded himself, with the most powerful leaders of our country and the world. He abused not only me, but countless others, and everyone seemed to look away. The truth is, Epstein had a free pass. He bragged about his powerful friends, including our current president, Donald Trump. It was his biggest brag, actually. And while what I endured will haunt me forever, I live every day with PTSD. I live as a mother trying to raise my child while distrusting a world that has betrayed me. This kind of trauma never leaves you. It breaks families apart. It shapes the way we see everyone around us. But one thing is certain, unless we learn from this history, monsters like Epstein will rise again. There are files, government files, that hold the truth about Epstein, who he knew, who owed him, who protected him, and why he was allowed to operate for so long without consequence. Why was Maxwell the only one held accountable when so many others played a role? Why does the government hide this information from the public? This secrecy is not protection, it's complicity. And as long as the truth is buried, justice will remain out of reach. That is why this bill matters. Passing it will, bless you, ensure that the suffering of survivors is not in vain. Passing it will bring accountability, transparency, and prevention. It will help protect the next generation of predators who seek to place themselves above the law through wealth, influence, and connections. This is not just my story. It is about every survivor who carries invisible scars. It's about the weight we live with daily. It is about the families broken and the futures stolen. So I ask you, President Trump and members of Congress, why do we continue to cover up sexual abuse and assault? Who are we covering for? Let the public know the truth. We cannot heal without justice. We cannot protect the future if we refuse to confront the past. Thank you.
Let's just give a round of applause for all the courage and strength that the survivors have shown. We now will take a few questions. You can always get Congressman Massey, me, or Congresswoman Green in the hallways and other places. If you have questions for us, that's fine. But I wanted to see first if you have questions for the lawyers and the survivors, and Brad will facilitate any of the questions to the survivors. Yes?
Yeah, this question would be for the survivors, Mr. Edwards. The president has said that this Epstein issue is a hoax, is the words that he used. Can we get your reactions to what you think when you hear him say that?
I'll answer that. Mr. President Donald J. Trump, I am a registered Republican, not that that matters because this is not political. However, I cordially invite you to the Capitol to meet me in person so you can understand this is not a hoax. We are real human beings. This is real trauma.
What does it feel like emotionally to hear that?
Devastating.
It's being gutted from the inside out. Not that I would know what that feels like, but I imagine it's the anxiety buildup with the depression and the survival mode, and then your nervous system goes limp and ironically is shot. And it feels like you just want to explode inside because nobody, again, is understanding that this is a real situation. These women are real. We're here in person. To say that it's a hoax is just not... Please humanize us. I would like Donald J. Trump and every person in America and around the world to humanize us, to see us for who we are and to hear us for what we have to say. There is no hoax. The abuse was real. Now, what goes on behind closed doors, I can't speak for that. What happens around the world politically, I cannot speak for that. But I am here with all of these women, including our attorneys, and I would be more than happy to meet with him, and I will meet him halfway.
Ms. Edwards, I wonder if any of the victims could respond to the news from recently about Ghislaine Maxwell being transferred to a lower security prison in the aftermath of speaking to Todd Blank.
You want that one? There you go.
About her transfer to
Oh, yeah.
Sure. I'm happy to speak to that. We were horrified to learn that she had been transferred to a prison camp. She is someone who was found guilty by a jury of sex trafficking. She not only, we often hear that she procured women for Jeffrey, which I think is a very sort of polite and minimizing term. She also participated in the abuse. She was a major architect of the scheme. And the fact that she's painted herself as a victim, I think is disgusting. And it was horrifying, I think, to us that we were not told about her prison transfer. We found out about it in the news.
Just
1 minute, I think Anushka maybe has something to say.
So, Anushka DiGiorgio, I testified alongside Annie at the trial of Ghislaine Maxwell. I was horrified when I found out not only had Ghislaine Maxwell been transferred to what's called a low security. It's really is like a holiday camp. And then afterwards, I got a notification from the Department of Justice telling me that this was going to happen when it had already happened. This woman abused children. I was abused by Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell for over 10 years. Ghislaine Maxwell was present
for some of my abuse at the hand of Jeffrey Epstein. She was present, she was complicit, she was enabling, and it is appalling and disgusting. And it's one of my worst nightmares that she not only be transferred, but at the possibility that's very much going around that she might be pardoned. This is not okay, guys. This is not okay.
And I just want to add that I think it sends a very dangerous message to our country, to the young people in our country, that someone that we all know is aware of these crimes could be given a pass.
And just for the last survivor who just spoke, the last survivor who just spoke, she said that Epstein would brag about her relationship with Donald Trump. Could she please elaborate about that?
And anybody
Shante.
get to the microphones.
Get close.
Yeah, I did say that. My first trip to the Palm Beach residence, I drove there from the airport with Ghislaine Maxwell, and Jeffrey and Ghislaine were always very boastful about their friends, their famous or powerful friends, and his biggest brag forever was that he was very good friends with Donald Trump. He had an 8x10 framed picture of him on his desk with the two of them. Like, they were very close.
Go ahead.
On his personal attorney, your survivors
Excuse me. One second.
called on me. For this client list that you ladies are putting together, you said it would be confidential, but will the public, could you clarify, will the public get to see that list?
So, Lisa, what's your envision here?
Is it going to go to the public or just amongst the survivors?
No, we're reaching out to survivors that are scared.
So come on up.
We're reaching out to survivors that are scared to come forward and that also know who they were trafficked to. So that's the list that we're compiling. And we're not quite sure, how we're going to release that, or even if we're going to. The Department of Justice needs to release the list.
Right,
yes.
For folks at home, they might be confused. The survivors know the names. You've seen these powerful people. Why can't you say the names? Could you just explain for folks?
Why do we have to say the names when the government knows the names? And we're also scared to do so. Look what's happened to so many of the survivors that have revealed names.
Yeah, I find it offensive.
I think it's also worth saying that having represented, I think, between our firm and Boyce Schiller, hundreds of victims, and we've talked to them about the various people that they were farmed out to. So we've created somewhat of a list. Most of these individuals, the victims, are very scared to say these names because they could get sued, they're going to get attacked, and nobody protected them the first time. And that was against one person. So is there a list? There is a list, but just to dispel kind of the common theme here, every one of these women was abused by Jeffrey Epstein, and his scheme was to personally abuse women. When they reached a certain age, he did farm a section of them, some of them, out to some of his friends. That doesn't mean all of his friends. With that said, I'm more than happy to assist in helping create the list behind the scenes and see what we do with it.
But if someone's interested,
Go ahead.
Hold on. I think if someone's interested in prosecuting, they may have something different to say about sharing a list. But they're not sharing a list for nothing to happen. And that's the experience that they've had for all of these years.
Thank you very much for telling us your story today at the Capitol. I know you've had some time since then, and I'm just wondering if there's anything you would like to add to what you said today.
I would say what I want to add from today was to let everyone know how hard that was for all of us today to speak up when we shouldn't have had to. I was a minor. I was 14 years old when these acts happened against me and my survivor sisters, a lot of us. And the fact that we had to stand in front of Congress today and speak our truth was such a powerful thing, but also in the same sense was something that we should have never had to have done. If the government would have done their job in the beginning of this, none of us would have had to come forward and put our face to this. And I don't think it's fair that in order for us to get attention to this case, that my 14-year-old self has to put myself publicly at 37 years old out.
And I so agree with you, Jenna Lisa, and I'm sorry that you've had to go through what you've had to go through this week, and it is unthinkable what you went through at age 14. You're not the only one who met Jeffrey Epstein at age 14. And as you know so much about this evidence against him. How long were you involved with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell?
I was involved with them long enough for them to do the damage. And I think that that's all that matters. It doesn't matter how many times you went, if you went multiple times, if you were involved for years or not. The damage was done the first time the abuse started.
Jenalisa, what are you finding when you share your stories with other survivors? How has that been for you? Has that been a positive experience?
It's like a double knife sword, right? Like, it's empowering and strength in numbers, and to feel like that you're not alone, especially when you have for so long kept this a secret because you thought you were the only one or the few of some. But then having that, being surrounded, especially this time around, being surrounded with all of the survivors, I think it really spoke volumes for all of us to be there and united front for this and show our support for each other, because I don't think anyone else could ever understand what we went through except for ourselves.
As we all know, there are the count goes into possibly the thousands, above 1,000 Epstein survivors out there. And so we're hearing from a very small group of those survivors. You've been both. You've been a silent survivor for a number of years, and now you are a publicly speaking survivor. Tell us about those two different conditions, those two different choices. The choice to be silent, what's that like for the women, you think, who are out there silent tonight, who are watching you, possibly hundreds of them watching you right now, who went through what you went through, but have remained silent and have remained private about it. What do you think their experience is like, and what is the experience like when you make that decision to change and become one of the speaking survivors?
I think being quiet and not saying anything is our own way of how we protect ourselves. A lot of us didn't know that this was such a wide variety. And then once you get the scope of the whole situation that was at play, I think we hold a lot of guilt to that. And I think that silences us a lot, because how do you heal from that, right? But then when you find your voice to get out there and speak, it's intense. You are putting your life on the line, is what I feel like. When you are speaking out and speaking your truth, which I shouldn't have to do because I was 14, but when we were speaking our truth is like, it's so intense and I can't describe it. It's like an out-of-body feeling. I'm there. I know it's my story and my truth, but you almost feel like you're detached from your body. And I think that's where therapy and all the mental health stuff comes into play, because it's a lot to come forward. It is a lot. I had a Congress member tell me today, like, we have a hard time speaking out. So for all of you guys to sit out there and speak your truth in front of millions and millions of people that are watching across the country speaks volumes to the strength that you guys have. And I feel so weak at times. So I don't know how people see me as powerful. And I know that, like, speaking my truth is powerful. It's just hard. And it's emotionally draining. And when I go home, I'm going to be feeling this for a very long time.
Jenalisa, I can tell you that for me, I'm just in awe of what you were able to do today and what the other women with you were able to do today. And I can completely understand the thousand silent women out there too, what their choice is. I completely get it. I don't see any easy choice to make here in either direction, but to be able to do what you did out there with that microphone, with those people, with all of that attention on live television nationally was really an extraordinary thing to watch for you and the others who you were joined by. And I can tell you that you are believed. You mentioned that in your comments today about what it's like to believe you won't be believed. Can you feel that there are people like us out here now who do fully believe you?
In 2019, when I came out, it was like a circus. And he had already been in trouble for so many years, so the fact that it was a circus. This is the first time ever speaking out, like, publicly, that I feel supported. And I feel supported from all sides, from everywhere. I have had so much amazing feedback today of people reaching out to me and telling me your voice mattered. I was not strong enough to speak for myself, and you are setting the pathway for other victims to come forward. And for me, that was also healing for me. That was healing for me today, because as victims and survivors, we feel crazy sometimes for how we feel about these circumstances. And so to have people supporting us, and I mean supporting us to the T, was absolutely beyond my wildest dreams that we would have this much support this time.
I have to ask you about someone who wasn't supportive today, and that is Donald Trump in the Oval Office calling what was happening in your discussion the Epstein hoax. He repeatedly called it a Democratic hoax, even though you were accompanied by Republican members of the House as you were standing there. How did you feel about that when you heard that word applied to what was happening there?
So I'm going to go off of my survivor sister, Haley Robertson, and I voted for him. I voted for Trump. And for him to say what he is saying is beyond me, because I put my hope in him, and he's supposed to protect us. And for him to say that this is a joke and that it's sides, this is not sides. We will say it time and time again. None of us are up there accusing him of anything. There is no one that is accusing him of any wrongdoing. So for the fact that he is saying those things and saying it's a hoax, who are you hiding for then? Because if it's not you, then who is it? And that scares me. Who is it?
One of the questions that was repeatedly asked by some of the women today was who was protecting Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell for all those years so that they could get away with that? And that seems to be something that many of you have been wondering about. Tell us about that. Tell us about your feelings about that.
The government has been protecting Jeffrey Epstein from the beginning. We can go back as far as he had people calling him out in the 90s. We can call it out when his case brought up in Palm Beach and he got prosecuted. They brought it up to a federal level. Alex Acosta decided that he would bring it back down to a state level and only charge him for 2 women. I can sit here and wholeheartedly tell you they never fully investigated that case at that time. They never truly went into how deep the spiral of twists and turns of who was connected and how they were connected, and these We were minors. We were children. I had girls today reach out to me from Royal Palm Beach High School, Palm Beach Central, Wellington High School, telling me I could never have spoken up and you were speaking up for all of us, and it happened. We saw it. And even if they weren't involved, they knew it was going on or had been asked by friend members to participate in that and chose not to. And thank God they did it.
Donald Trump has been known to watch this program. He watches a lot of cable news. He could be watching right now. What would you say to him about the Epstein files? He's in complete control of releasing the Epstein files. They could be released in their entirety tomorrow if Donald Trump simply told the Justice Department to do it. What would you say to him about it right now?
You have daughters. You know what it is like to raise children and to be a parent. Outside of all this hoopla that you're the president or you're Donald J. Trump and you have your Trump stuff, you know what it is to be a parent. You know that. Could you imagine if that was your daughter that was trafficked to people? Could you imagine your 14-year-old daughter having to go through what we had to go through? And then you sit here and say what you said? You should be supporting us. You should be backing us. And if you have any doubt of your mind, our lawyers are ready to speak. We have spoken to FBI. We have just spoken to every law enforcement agency that we could possibly have been asked to speak to. We have been traced down to corroborate our stories. This is not a joke. We spoke our truth and you were telling us pretty much that we're lying. I put my hope in you when I voted for you for our country, and you can't even back us when we need you the most. And we need to heal. We're not healing.
Lisa, as you go forward in this situation, what are your hopes beyond tonight and beyond this week, beyond this issue of the Epstein files?
I hope we truly get transparency through all of this. I hope people listen to us. I hope they decide to release what they need to release, and so we can put this to rest. It is not fair to the rest of us, to the survivors, to sit here and have to endure this media frenzy and this craziness. It's re-traumatizing. It's re-victimizing us every time. And it's not fair to us. We are going on decades of dealing with this. And the government has failed us in every aspect of it. So how do we come from that? We need to heal. We're trying to heal, but we're not healed. And we can't heal until you guys give us what we need. And we need answers. We need something. This can't keep going on. It's truly not fair to all of us.
Lisa, I don't want you to feel constrained just by my questions here and responding to those.
Yes.
So before we go, I just want to give you an opportunity to add anything else that you feel you might want to say tonight.
I just want to thank everyone that is supporting us and listening to us and backing us up, even if that means that you're turning on Trump in the Republican sense to be able to sign this bill, because that sounded what it was to me, like, don't sign it. I hope you guys hear us and see us as your children, as your loved ones, your brothers, your sisters, and you fight for us, because this isn't fair. We have lost so many survivors already from mental health and having to deal with this and never getting the peace and the justice that we deserved. And we lost it when he died. We lost it when they failed us in the government. Like, come on. Like, when is it our time to just, like, be humans? Like, we're kind of like aliens.
Lisa, I can imagine how strange these feelings are and how you might feel like some sort of laboratory study that we're all doing, zooming in on you. But you've really brought your humanity here tonight to us, and I think we can see you and see who you are. And we really appreciate your joining this discussion tonight.
I really appreciate you having me and to listen to my voice so I could speak for all my survivor sisters.
Lisa, I'm very sorry that these are the circumstances that you're joining us tonight. I'm sorry for what you've gone through, but we greatly appreciate your voice tonight, and it has been very important. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. O'Donnell.
One of the women who could not be there today is, of course, Virginia Roberts Giuffre, one of Epstein's accusers who was pivotal to the federal criminal charges that were finally brought against him in 2019. Virginia Giuffre tragically died by suicide earlier this year. But today she was represented at the press conference by her brother and sister-in-law who spoke on her behalf, and many of the survivors took a moment to honor her memory. At the end of today's event, the lawyers representing Epstein survivors made sure everyone there understood how important Virginia's legacy continues to be today.
Virginia Roberts Giuffre is an American hero. Yeah. She is somebody without whom we would not be able to have this voice. She was the one who had courage to name names, speak out against people, and she was standing up against everybody at one time with an enormous amount of pressure.
And most of these women are here because of Virginia Roberts Giuffre.
Earlier today, I spoke with Virginia Roberts Giuffre's brother and sister-in-law about today's event, the calls to release the Epstein files, and what happens next. I'm joined now by Virginia Giuffre's brother, Sky Roberts, and his wife, Amanda Roberts. I want to thank both of you so much for being here, for just being tireless advocates for not only the memory of your sister, but also so many other survivors. I know you have both been a tremendous source of strength. Let me just start. I've been glued watching every detail of the last 36 hours, and there have been some incredible moments over the course of the last 2 days. I mean, Brad Edwards called your sister an American hero. Survivors said today and yesterday that they were there because of your sister. I'm going to get emotional talking about this. I'm sorry. But how does that feel? I have siblings. I have not been through anything like you've been through. How has that felt to hear your sister called out as such a source of inspiration over the last 2 days?
We are so proud of what she was able to accomplish over her lifetime. You know, I think many people can relate to that. You know, she's a normal person. You know, she's somebody that you could go down the street and have a drink with. But the truth is that she fought for so many brave survivors that came forward today. And something that really struck me today was, you know, in talking to some of the survivors was, you know, she was like 15 of them, you know, in one. She would just come out and point fingers and was not scared to go up against these rich and powerful men. And so, you know, and I would say today is a show of force. You know, I am so proud of these women for coming forward, for these survivors coming forward. And she should be here today. She would be here today if she could. But we are very honored and very proud of her.
Yeah, I will say I felt her in everything that they said. But even in just seeing them and sitting with them, I see so much of her in them. And so I know that she's proud of them. This was a moment that Virginia had been waiting for a very long time. And I felt her. I felt her presence there.
Today, this morning, we've talked about this a little bit, but you were part of this incredibly powerful press conference on the steps of Capitol Hill. And I just wanted to, Sky, paraphrase something you said this morning, because it really stuck with me. You said if you vote no, your stance will be clear. And I think you were talking, of course, about the discharge petition. You went on to say, look these survivors in the eye and tell them why. Then look the people of the United States in the eye and tell them why. And then when you're alone, look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself why. And that is fundamentally what the choice that every elected official has. What do you think they are looking, the members who have not come out and said they would support this discharge petition, what are they looking themselves in the mirror and telling themselves as to why they're not supporting it, do you think?
They have to live with that, right? I think for me, it's not about what you're saying right now. It's about what you're doing and what kind of actions are we actually bringing forth, right? We say these really fancy words, transparency and accountability, but that's not just a word, that's an action, right? So you can't just say it and then not do anything about it. And I think we also need to stop redirecting the attention, right? We need to be very straightforward. And we need to stop beating around the bush. And that's from the top all the way down to the bottom, right? And I think part of that right now is this is a moment. There really is a true opportunity for them to do the right thing. And if they decide not to, then we know what side you stand on. Your voters, the people who put you in office to serve the people, will now know exactly where you stand. And then that's my question to them, because it's so relatable, because we are fathers, we are mothers, we are brothers, we're sisters. And so at the very fundamental level, this is a human issue. And I hope to dear God that is the strong message that continue to be brought forward, because this is not a party issue. This is a human issue. And so they need to boil it down to the bottom here and stop protecting these monsters.
Redirect is a very good way of saying it. I mean, you both and so many other survivors and family members have been very clear that you want all of these files to be public, that you want them to be available, that you want the families to be able to review them. And yet there are a range of excuses. And again, this should not be a partisan thing, but to quote someone specifically, one of the explanations Speaker Mike Johnson gave was that the petition does not, quote, adequately protect innocent victims, as if it is the people who have been the victims who are the reason for keeping these files back. What do you say to that?
They've been waiting for decades. They came forward a long time ago, and they are for this. This is what they have been asking for, and it should be with their protection. It should be those who want to remain anonymous, they should remain anonymous. And that is something that, from my understanding, has been worked through with this new bill that they are trying to pass. They have carefully sat with survivors and lawyers of the survivors to make sure that that protection is in place. But they are asking, we are asking, Virginia was asking for a long time. Her documents are waiting right now to be unsealed. They've always been asking for this.
One of the there were so many powerful moments today. Another powerful moment on the steps was Lisa Phillips announcing a list would be compiled, a list of people who need to be held accountable. And I just want to say, obviously, that should not be on the shoulders of survivors to do, but it seems it is currently part of what survivors and their family members are trying to do. Why is that so important?
I would say, this isn't just a moment, this is a movement right now. And what you're essentially doing is you're putting these survivors in a position where they have to stick their necks out there and potentially get threats. They have at risk of being sued. And I think it's a real disgrace to them, because it's the government's job to protect the people. It's the Department of Justice's job to protect the people, not the powerful. So by them basically, again, I'll say it, they're putting these files out here at different periods, but what we're starting to feel like is they're not really uncovering much. They're just trying to give this perception of transparency and then shove the rest underneath the rug. And what the survivors are saying clearly is, are you really going to make us do this?
Yeah.
And I think this is a powerful moment in our history, and it's time to stand by doing the right thing. Don't put them in this position. Don't make them do that.
And you're talking about, just to make sure people understand, there's been there was a release just yesterday of 33,000 documents, most of which had been public before. It wasn't a lot of the information that survivors and their families are looking for. That seems to be one of the things that some, including Mike Johnson, are leaning into as this process is happening. We don't need this discharge petition, but that's not enough, is what you're saying, I think.
We're not releasing all of them, right? We didn't ask to release some of them. We were asked to release all of them. And at least from early reports, I haven't personally had the opportunity to skim, go through every single one of them, but it doesn't look like there's a ton of new information inside of there. Like, we're looking for real justice here. And again, it's not a word, it's an action.
Yeah. It's only 1% of the files that I think you want access to, and that has been by people who have reviewed it, and 97% of what they released has been released before. Right. So people have reviewed it for you, I will say. Let me ask you about, because you just touched on this, and I thought this was an incredibly powerful moment of the press conference this morning. There were a number of people, Haley Robeson, Anuska, talking about the threats and the impact of threats on their lives. Really scary moments. People who are already taking the moment to courageously speak out and feeling threats from a range of people. Where are they coming from? What should people understand about that and the threats that so many survivors are living with day to day?
Yeah. Virginia lived with that every single day. And when she first came forward, I think it gets lost on people how large this was. This was a global operation, how powerful these people were, how much money they have. She spoke about basically being threatened into financial ruin. She was physically threatened. Her family was threatened all throughout this. And then there is the level of public scrutiny, right? You know, the culture when they first came out, there's this disbelief. There's always a constant question of survivors, and they're always constantly criticized about how and why they say things. And these were children. They were young girls. And we have forgotten that. And I think we really need to open our eyes and change the culture and the conversation. We have to allow these survivors the safety and protection of their truth.
That is a very powerful way of saying it. Mm-hmm. One of the things, neither of you have asked to be put in the spotlight. I think you'd probably rather be living your life privately in many ways, but you're here for your sister. There's an easy way that this could all be released. The President and the Department of Justice could release all these files. It doesn't even have to go through this process of a discharge petition. That's not necessary. I don't know if you've seen this. I just want to play, because President Trump was asked about, the question he was asked was about the accusations that the Department of Justice is slow walking the release of the files. He was just asked this shortly after the press conference. Let's just play it.
Mm-hmm. This is a Democrat hoax that never ends. From what I understand, thousands of pages of documents have been given, but it's really a Democrat hoax because they're trying to get people to talk about something that's totally irrelevant to the success that we've had as a nation since I've been president.
This is something that everybody should support. How do you even make progress when that is what is standing in the way of having this all released?
That's a very frustrating feeling, right? This is the leader of our nation. This was no small thing. It wasn't irrelevant. It's not a hoax. There's testimony after testimony. Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted. We know that this is really American. People know that this happened. And so it puts survivors, again, these people who have had a very real lived experience, live with their trauma, that journey doesn't end. And to hear the leader of their nation say things like that for us, it's gut-wrenching.
I want to ask you about, your sister, she wrote a memoir titled Nobody's Girl, a memoir of surviving abuse and fighting for justice. But your family put out a statement, and I think this is important for people to hear and understand, saying you don't want the book to be released. Help people watching understand why.
Well, I think there's a two-part to that. Mm-hmm. We were never not for the book being published. I think there is another story about Virginia that she had a very difficult time coming forward with, and she was finally able to towards the end of her life, that a lot of people were unaware of. And it really is the domestic violence portion of her story. And we as her family who witnessed it and seen it, and ultimately that's what put her in the position to make the choice that she did. We were very adamant that this book addressed that issue because it's so very important. It's so heavily intertwined. Statistically, it's very easy for you from one abuse to enter another relationship like that. But we were able to come to an agreement with the publishing house to really address those things because we stand by the work and her story needs to be told. But we really wanted to provide context for the reader, for them to understand that other aspect of the story.
I think that's so important for people to hear, which is why I wanted to ask, because it's her story. She's not able to tell her story anymore, which is why you two are telling her story. What else, Sky, about your sister do you wish people knew and understood in this moment? Because so many people have heard her name over the last couple of days.
Yeah. I think you framed it the best in at the beginning of this interview is she really was an American hero. You know, but she was still a mom, she was still a sister, she was still such a normal person, but she was fierce and she would stand up to anyone. And, you know, I spoke to a survivor earlier today and she knew Virginia, and they said, if they just only listened to us 20 years ago. This is the moment she always wanted. She would be screaming right now from a mountain because that's who she is. But it's not because any other reason. There was no motive for her to come forward. The reason she came forward is very simple, and this is why you break it down to the human level, is because when she held her baby girl for the first time, she knew this couldn't happen to any other children out there. Because if she hadn't come forward, Epstein would still be doing these absolutely monstrous things. Ghislaine Maxwell would still be doing these monstrous things. And the very disappointing part is our government isn't putting these other people in their place. And that is their responsibility to do. And that's why the show of force today on the footsteps in our nation's capital is a powerful statement for her, for people, and she inspired many of these survivors to come forward, and she's still with us.
Before I let you go, I just want to ask you, for anybody who's tuning in and is so moved by this story and wants to do something, what happens now, and what should people out there be doing?
Talk to your legislators, right? That's how we make change. We continue to demand answers, and not just answers, but action. We want to see further investigations. And if that's something that you want to see, which I believe the American people want to see that, let them know. Don't stay silent. Keep talking. Don't let this go back under the rug.
Sky and Amanda Roberts, you're amazing people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jen.
I think you can see why the two of them stuck with me through the course of the day after I spoke with them. Today, this morning, was so much about empowering and lifting up these incredible survivors. And I wanted to mention that before her death, Virginia Giuffre founded an organization called Speak Out, Act, Reclaim, or Soar to help survivors of sex trafficking reclaim their stories. Virginia chose the blue morpho butterfly as the organization's logo to symbolize the transformation from victim to survivor. And that was so much what this morning was about. So tonight I'm wearing my own blue butterfly in support of the survivors of sex trafficking everywhere who have been so bravely speaking out.
The courage is contagious, and Liz Stein joins us now. She is an anti-trafficking advocate and an educator.
It is a crime, and the crime doesn't always look as people believe it does. That is your experience.
Oftentimes it doesn't, especially the way that sex trafficking is portrayed in the media. That's not how sex trafficking happens, and I think that that's part of this conversation. I've said publicly before that I'm a reasonably well-educated person, and I didn't even realize that I had been trafficked until Epstein was arrested in 2019. And that's not an uncommon experience. And so I think that part of what we need to add to this conversation is what we're actually looking at when we're talking about sex trafficking. It's not a little girl with blonde hair and blue eyes being snatched up by a guy in a van and chained up in a basement. It's much more mundane looking than that. And I think that if people really understood what sex trafficking looked like, the perspective might be different.
That's a powerful point, because I think a lot of what drives the American perception of things are conspiracies and Hollywood, a picture, a movie or whatever, things that they may read. But we have discounted the victims. We don't listen to the victims. We assume they're lying. We assume it's a hoax. We assume it's political. And a lot of our political leadership drives that narrative as well in an environment like this, led by the President of the United States. Just put it right here in the center of the table so everybody understands it. Because this moment for me today is what struck at the heart for me. I'd like you to listen to some of Epstein survivors sharing their ages, America, so you understand exactly what we're talking about.
I was 16 years old when I was flown to New Mexico to spend a weekend with Epstein.
I was only 14 years old when I met Jeffrey.
I was only 14 years old when I was introduced to Jeffrey Epstein by a 13-year-old friend of mine.
I was only 14 years old when my friend brought me over to Jeffrey Epstein's house.
I was a 16-year-old high school student athlete who made good grades and had high aspirations for college when I was recruited and asked by a classmate of mine.
So that we understand, to your point, let's not confuse this. When these young women, young girls, had their encounter with Jeffrey Epstein, as my mama would say, a grown behind man, right?
Yes.
They were 14, 16 years old. So don't get confused by the fact that you're looking at a 30-year-old woman today and thinking, well, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's also important to note that not all of the survivors of Epstein and Maxwell were underage. Some of us were very, very young women.
Right.
And I think that that's something that is not out in the public as much as the underage women. Both equally important, but worth noting.
Yes.
Yeah. You said something in answer to Alicia's question that you did not realize that you were trafficked until Jeffrey Epstein was arrested. What was it that made you realize that you too had survived his trafficking?
So that was pretty interesting. When the reports started coming out when Epstein was arrested, the focus really was on the young women in Florida. And so in my mind, the way that the narrative has been in my brain for the past more than 2.5 decades was that I met these people, they were my friends. I thought they were my friends, and I had a really horrific experience with them that I never, ever wanted to think or talk about. And so when Epstein was first arrested, I was kind of in my mind saying, but I wasn't trafficked, I was their friend. And it wasn't the media that taught me what trafficking was, it was the anti-trafficking movement. And I really had to educate myself as to what sex trafficking was. And the more that I learned about what trafficking looks like, the more I was able to say, that's exactly what happened to me.
Right. This is what conditioning looks like.
Absolutely.
This is what abuse looks like. It is sometimes a long process. And that, I think, is part of why it was also amazing today to see you all together, to see you speaking with one voice in many ways, though you may have different experiences. And one of, I think, the most profound things we heard today was the possibility of survivors themselves releasing a list. Take a listen.
We know the names. Many of us were abused by them. Now, together as survivors, we will confidentially compile the names we all know were regularly in the Epstein world. And it will be done by survivors and for survivors. No one else is involved. Stay tuned for more details on that. Because history is watching, and so are the women who will come after us.
Have you been a part of those conversations? Would you be interested in being a part of that effort? Do you have any concerns about a release of a list?
I think that when we talk about the survivors coming together and releasing a list, I don't think that's something that we're just willing to release to the general public. But I think that all of the survivors involved are willing to do whatever they have to in order to help justice be served. And so I have not had any contact with anyone from this administration, but I think that was part of our coming together today. The rally this morning was really born out of my frustration that our voices weren't being heard, and although we were telling our stories in the media individually, I thought that our collective voice was really important.
It was very important. So I'm struck, even as we sit here right now, you or many of the women who were there this morning have not heard from at least the Department of Justice or even the White House?
No. Nothing.
I mean, one of the things that we've heard from attorneys who work with the survivors is that this is not new, right? The not listening to survivors dates back 20 plus years, which I think is why there's such an interest in Alex Acosta and that sweetheart deal out of Florida. If you were the one who got to sit down with Alex Acosta, what is it you would want to know from him?
I would ask Mr. Acosta to be truthful at any cost. I think that he really holds a lot of keys as to what happened in Florida, and we need answers. If Epstein was being investigated federally, why was he only given a state charge and a sweetheart deal? You know, and I think that Mr. Acosta has those answers. Now, I hope that he's transparent about what actually happened, because I think that that will help us put the pieces of the puzzle together.
After the, go ahead.
I was just going to make a note relative to the Acosta testimony coming up. I hope you're right. I really do. But you had the House Speaker, Mike Johnson, today noting he didn't see today's press conference with the survivors. You have the president referring to what he did hear and what he was told about the survivors today, that it was a hoax. That's the frustration here, is that the more you're pressing to get the point made and to have your voices heard, the more the institutions are hardening against that.
Yeah. And I think that that's a real problem. And I think that that's why we are so geared up right now, because we're tired of being ignored and we're tired of this being brushed under the rug. And I think that we were really hopeful that today would kind of make a cultural shift and really implore people to look at this for what it is. It's a crime. It's a crime of sex trafficking, and it's not a political issue. There were criminals involved. There were perpetrators, there were enablers, and there were survivors. And we're not talking to the survivors, but we're talking to the woman who was convicted of these crimes.
As Congress returns from summer recess, the Jeffrey Epstein scandal is back on the agenda. The Epstein estate plans to hand over the convicted sex offender's birthday book and other documents to Congress on September 8th. The book is reportedly, as you know, filled with well wishes from friends and associates, including an explicit message and drawing by President Trump, which Trump denies he did. But most importantly, lawmakers and the public will get to hear more firsthand accounts from Epstein survivors. The Washington Post reports that House Oversight Chair James Comer and members of his committee will meet privately with some of the survivors on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, Epstein survivors, including our next guest, will join Congressman Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie at a press conference on Capitol Hill. Joining us now are those Epstein survivors, Jess Michaels and Teresa Helm. Teresa is also a survivor services coordinator at the National Center on Sexual Exploitation. Thank you both so much for coming on the weekend. Jess, I want to start with you. You will be meeting with at least Ro Khanna on Capitol Hill. Are you hoping that more Republicans add you to their docket, that you meet with Comer? And if you were to meet with some of these Republicans and James Comer, what would you say to them?
I think what we're looking for with all of these meetings is courage on the part of Republican representatives, because this is most importantly a bipartisan issue. This is not something that anyone on any side of the aisle should be for. No one should be for child sex trafficking and allowing perpetrators to escape justice, and no one should be for systems failing to prosecute over decades.
And I want to ask both of you, actually. We are seeing a little bit of movement in Congress. I mean, House Oversight Chairman James Comer, as Eugene noted, is going to be meeting with survivors on Tuesday. I'm not sure if both of you are on his docket. There are also a number of documents that he says he has subpoenaed for and is going to potentially release from the Epstein estate. But one, are you planning on getting on James Comer's schedule? And then two, what would you like to hear from the White House on this? And what does their lack of acknowledging any of this mean to both of you?
Go ahead, Teresa.
Hi. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me. Jess, good to see you here.
Nice to meet you. Yeah.
Nice to meet you, too. I look forward to seeing you in a few days. Yes, I hope to meet with as many people who are willing to listen. I think it's very important for us to finally get at least some kind of FaceTime here on the subject. And what I would really be hopeful that I see from the White House and the administration is support on this and not willing to, at this point, I feel like we've gone further past the point of survivors being not even at the table or in the discussion. We've gone to the point of being almost even silenced or just entirely bypassed. So I'm hopeful for support is what I'm hopeful for, and the acknowledgement, and to stand with us like we stand with them. We are all in this together. We all want to protect children. We all have the obligation and the responsibility to protect children and people in general. So support would be truly, truly wonderful. We are all, this is just humanity, dignity. This is what this is. This support would be wonderful.
Yeah.
And Jess, I just want to get you on that as well. What are you in talks with James Comer's office?
I won't be in James Comer's office, but I will have other opportunities to be speaking to representatives. But there's something that's also, I think, being missed by a lot of people. The American people are with Epstein survivors. They are, if you've looked at any of my comments on social media, people are appalled at what's happening. They want justice, not just for us. They understand that this affects them and how justice is going to play out in the future for if this ever happens again. We need systemic change, looking at all the failures that have happened over decades. And we need to have policy change that's going to make sure that none of this happens again. Nothing has changed, as I understand it, since Ghislaine Maxwell was sentenced and put in prison. Nothing has changed in any of those policies. We are asking, and we seem to be now, we seem to have become the representative of a lot of sexual assault survivors out there that have never been heard and never been seen. So I do think that the wise thing would be for this administration and anyone meeting with us is to stand with us and support us, because there is not a single person in this country that would ever say, yes, all of this is okay as is.
Jess and Teresa, thank you so much for being here with us today. I'd like to read the statement from the family of Epstein accuser Virginia Giuffre, who, as you both know, died by suicide. The family was talking about the Ghislaine Maxwell transcripts that were released from Todd Blanche's interview with Maxwell. And in it, they say about that transcript, this travesty of justice entirely invalidates the experiences of the many brave survivors who put their safety, security, and lives on the line to ensure her conviction, including our sister. During Todd Blanche's bizarre interview, she is never challenged about her court-proven lies, providing her a platform to rewrite history. Teresa, what is your reaction to the released transcripts of this interview with a convicted sex trafficker, Maxwell?
Yes, I can very clearly tell you I felt pretty gutted, to be perfectly clear and honest on that. I sat and listened to this woman's calm, articulate voice. And you know what? That is the same calm and articulate voice that led me to believe that I was in a safe environment. And that is the same calm voice that led me to walk myself to Jeffrey's home after meeting with Ghislaine Maxwell that day. I entirely, wholeheartedly agree with Virginia's family. And I was appalled. I'm continued to be appalled at the release and just the entire situation surrounding this interview with Ghislaine Maxwell. It is absolutely, it goes so far beyond throwing salt on wounds or anything like that. It's entirely destructive to survivors as such as myself that had gone through personal experience with her, lived experience with Ghislaine Maxwell. And it entirely is devastating to the entire survivor community that if we're going to give this woman a platform and elevate her voice when the only voices that should be continued to be elevated and platformed are the survivors of this case and many other cases. I entirely agree with Jess on this as far as systemic review, reform, because this goes so far beyond, this is such a high profile case and I get that. And it goes so much, it touches every single solitary soul in on this earth, really, because the magnitude of assault and sexual abuse and violence that we have, this touches everyone.
Yeah, and we are still waiting to see whether or not Ghislaine Maxwell will come and testify before Congress in a very public setting where both Republicans and Democrats will be able to ask her questions. Jess Michaels and Teresa Helm, thank you so much for coming on today and for sharing your stories.